started. Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming to our panel about applying to grad school and attending grad school. So my name is Rachel Ding, and I will be the moderator for this panel. I graduated from Emory University in 2022 with a BA in Finance and Political Science, and then I completed my master's in Global Affairs at Tsinghua through the Schwarzman Scholars Program. So just a very quick bit of context, it's a global graduate school program founded by Stephen Schwarzman to develop the next generation of leaders. And so it's focused on China and diplomacy mainly. So I lived in China, I studied there at Tsinghua for a year with 150 other international students, and I got my master's degree. So I'm very excited to introduce our star-studded panel. You guys are going to be in for a treat. First of all, it's an all-girl group, so first of all. We're really excited to share insider tips about grad school admissions and what it's really like to go to grad school. So this session's objectives are really to provide insights onto the insider tips on admissions and then what it's like to prepare early. So I'm going to pass it on to you guys to introduce yourselves. We would love to know, what are you currently studying? Where did you attend undergrad? And what is a quick timeline of your academic and career journey?
All right, I'll start. So hi everyone, my name is Gloria Zhang. I went to Duke for undergrad. I then took 2 years off where I did healthcare consulting. I went back to Duke for my medical school training, and now I'm a second-year orthopedic surgery resident at NYU.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for making the time to come out. My name is Joy Fan. I just finished my second year at Harvard Law School. Prior to Harvard Law, I completed my Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering at Columbia University. And it's great to see all of you here.
Hi everyone, I'm Mingyii Wu. I've currently just finished my first year at Wharton getting my MBA. In 2019, I graduated from Brown University with a degree in applied mathematics and economics. In the 5 years between Brown and Wharton, I worked in life sciences consulting, very similar to Gloria, and I hope you all are excited to hear about grad school.
Yay! So let's dive in. The first question is, we know that applying to grad school can be really competitive and stressful, depending on what program you're looking at. And so we're wondering, what are some of the most critical elements in your application that you felt like contributed to your acceptance of these highly competitive programs?
Yeah, I think medical school is a little bit different than business and law. There are a few more check boxes that you have to go through. So particularly, I would get involved with your pre-med office to see what classes you need. Typically, it's like a year of chemistry, a year of biology, biochem, organic chemistry. In terms of other things that we look for, you definitely want to have a demonstrated interest in medicine. So whether that's shadowing a physician or volunteering in the hospital, you want to be able to prove that you've seen what medicine looks like before you apply into medical school. And then lastly, I would say also research is pretty important. You don't need to be first author on a paper, but you do need to demonstrate that you can complete a research project from beginning to end. And so whether that's your senior thesis or working in a lab, demonstrating that you have the critical thinking skills and can advance the field forward are important things we look for.
Sure, I can go next. So business school is a little different. I would say it's a little less prescriptive than the process that Gloria just mentioned for med school. What business schools and MBA programs are really looking for, I would say, is early career success. They're looking for potential in your early career, so examples of leadership, examples where you really took initiative from start to finish, where you handled some really tough challenges, client issues, things like that. And they're looking for potential because ultimately, you are going to be the alumni of their school, and they want to be able to stand behind you very proudly. The second thing that I would say they look for is teamwork. At least at Wharton, they highly, highly value the collaborative process. I'm pretty sure every MBA program does, and specifically at Wharton, they also test for it in the interview process. We do a team-based discussion for our MBA interviews, so you actually get together in a group of 5 or 6 people and you interview as a group, and they actually analyze how well you work with other people, because teamwork is such a big part of being a leader. And I would say the last thing is just, you know, your openness to learning. I think they really look for people who are there to embrace the experience and to really make the most of it. And so what that could look like is, you know, you just show a natural curiosity for learning, and you want to be continuously learning throughout your life, and you know how you can show examples of that.
I think both of what Mingyi and Gloria said were incredibly great. I did want to address one aspect of what Rachel said. She mentioned that the graduate degree application process is very competitive. I do want to note that though it is competitive, the competitive nature is not necessarily something that you can change. And I think that focusing on how competitive it is may also breed toxicity a little bit. I think the most important thing to focus on is yourself and exploring your interests through this process, and also writing an application that is true to you. For law school specifically, obviously you take either the LSAT or GRE and fill out the other parts of the application, but I think in terms of the assets and skills and the value add that you can provide, I think it's looking for opportunities to show that you can think critically, analyze, write well, and whatever walk of life you find yourself in, whatever opportunities there are to show and harness these skills, I think that's what matters.
Yeah, that sounds great. The second question is pretty simple. What are you getting out of grad school and why do it?
Yeah, I think for me, ever since high school, you know, I really loved science, I really loved medicine, and then I think in medical school, actually getting to do my clinical rotation, so working with patients, working with families, and seeing just the difference that you can make in someone's life is very rewarding. I think the reason to do medical school is because you want to help others. It really shouldn't be something that, you know, your parents kind of force on you. So it's a long training process, and so I think shadowing and getting involved in medicine and seeing what it really looks like is important before considering medical school.
Awesome. This whole mic situation is kind of funny. Just trying to figure out who's going to pass me one. But I think from law school, the school is the school, right? Work is the work. I think one of the best things that I've had from it are the mentors that I've been able to meet, whether it's the peers in my same class or in terms of professors. I really do think that you are able to meet a lot of people who come from different walks of life, who are interested in different aspects and areas of the law. And I think it's been really great to really build out this community. And I think something like Gloria said that I also want to emphasize is that all of these different professions are ways in which we can serve communities, in which we can serve others. So I think understanding and building out that community and being able to know how other people are serving others through different areas of the law has been very inspiring, motivating, and also introduced me to areas outside of the particular branch of law that I was interested in when I first started as well.
Great. Yeah, I mean, just to, you know, kind of echo what Gloria and Joy have already said, I mean, I think one of the biggest reasons why people go to get an MBA is the network. And you know, you've probably heard that a million times. It's a very big stereotype. People go to the MBA, they, you know, meet a ton of people and they leave. And I would say that's pretty true. I would say in pre-term, it was actually really overwhelming, the transition of, you know, just having to meet, let's say like 40, I felt like 40 people a day for 2 weeks straight. That was a lot, but you know, throughout my time, I really learned to, you know, hone in on which relationships I really want to invest in and foster, and I feel like now I've built a pretty strong network, and it really comes to fruition in unexpected ways. So for example, a friend of mine was really interested in coming to Wharton next year, and she was deciding between Wharton and one other place, and she told me, hey, I'm really interested in learning about impact investing in PE. And I was like, great, let me connect you with 2 people, and those 2 people actually ended up connecting me with more people that she could talk to. And I think that's just an example of how far-reaching and impactful that network can be. It's not just, you know, your connections, but your network's connections, and it really builds on itself. So I think that's a big part of what I'm getting out of the MBA. The second thing, and just for context, a lot of people get an MBA either to pivot into another field or just to further their career within that same field they're in. So for example, in a couple of industries, you really need an MBA to be able to progress up the food chain, if you will. So that's why some people get MBAs, and for other people, a lot of my friends at Wharton who come from a military background, they really want to break into the business side of things, and an MBA is a really, really great way to kind of learn the foundation and pivot into business. And so I would say those are probably the two biggest things people get out of an MBA.
So this isn't explicitly talked about much, but grad school often has a lot of unspoken rules, and that can make it really challenging for newcomers. So many of our parents have advanced degrees, but rarely have they had the experience of the degrees that are sitting up here or that we are pursuing. And so I've certainly realized this in college, but when my American peers just sort of instinctively understood something socially or culturally, and I wasn't prepared for that, what experiences have you had that have presented as a learning curve in grad school?
Yeah, I think in medicine, something that I definitely struggled with was feeling like, oh, I don't want to bother people. But I think that even in the last panel, a thing that they mentioned a lot was self-advocacy. And so I think reaching out to mentors or other clinicians to explore different subspecialties, see if they have research projects, that was something that was new and I had to develop for myself. And it was amazing just how many people are willing to help, whether that's attendings or whether that's older med students, even ones that don't look like me. You don't need a mentor that looks exactly like you to help open doors. And so navigating that throughout medical school, I think, made me stronger, and I got to explore a lot of different cool opportunities through it.
There we go. I completely echo everything Gloria said, but obviously translated for the legal profession. I think something that we were actually all talking about earlier is that there's also something called the halo effect for students. So a lot of people in the profession, they really want to mentor the younger generation, and they're actually really receptive and open to mentoring students. And I think this applies not only in terms of grad school or undergrad, but even if you're in high school, even if you're in middle school, it's never too early to start reaching out to people in careers and professions that you want to see yourself in, and to really speak with them to understand what their day-to-day is like, whether or not this is something that you see yourself in, whether or not there's a fit there. So I think the first thing is absolutely reaching out and being proactive in that sense, especially while you're a student, because the halo effect is definitely real there. I think the second thing is to not rush. So I go to school and I see a lot of senators' children or children of billionaire families, and that's really great for them, right? They're born into this network, they're born into the wealth, yada yada, great. But I don't necessarily have those same inroads. I think the main thing here is twofold. I think first is to not compare yourself and to notice what you lack. I think au contraire, something that we can look at is where we are, and to recognize and to be grateful for the platform that we're given and for the progress and sacrifices made by our parents, so that we can do better as well. So I think that's number one there, is to lean in more towards gratitude and less towards sort of comparing yourself and recognizing inadequacies or lapses there. So I think gratitude, number one. I think the second aspect of this is to not rush. I remember 1L year when I first went to law school, I noticed everyone else had taken a couple of years off to work, or who came from these families, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to go find a professor I can be a research assistant to, or be a teaching fellow for, or I need to find mentors, and I need to do all of this on day one. No. Things don't happen like that. You need time to adjust, you need time to grow into your environment. These things will happen, these things do take time, but I think having that patience, doing the work, also being proactive, but don't rush yourself in that process. I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything that's already been said. I think jumping off of Joy's point about, being really grateful for the platform that we're given and the networks that we have access to at these kind of wonderful institutions. I mean, as my brother likes to point out, when else am I going to sit next to in class a top 10 NFL draft pick, right? And when else am I going to get to pick his brain about, what he thinks about school and what he thinks about our marketing class and things like that. So in addition to, I think, being grateful, I think just being open to the experience, like I mentioned earlier, being open to learning and, learning from them about their experiences, how they see the world differently, so that you can maybe adapt your perspective to be more all-encompassing. And then the second thing, to Gloria's point about mentorship, I think the .edu email address opens a lot of doors. Like, truly, it really does. As soon as I got my, Wharton.edu email, I just started emailing people, trying to cold call them, cold email them, and I would very much encourage you to do the same. Just to, to Joy's point, start networking and start talking to people, getting those informational interviews so that you understand what, whatever field you want to enter into, whatever program you want to enter into, because that really does open a lot of doors, and people, especially within the school's network, will really want to help you. Alumni would love hearing from people that are currently in the program and just really want to chat.
And I think we focused a lot on sort of not being afraid to reach out to the experts in their field, utilizing as much privilege as you can get from the EDU email. But when I was applying to grad school, I personally found that it was much more helpful to talk to my peer age. Those that just were in grad school or had recently completed my program. That was way more helpful to understand what was actually going on day to day than speaking to someone 30 years older. So, we definitely have people here who are actively considering graduate school, and we'll go home after this conference and start preparing for grad school or think about grad school. So as we wrap up, what is one thing that you want the audience to remember from today's discussion? And what is a big piece of advice for those who are really weighing whether or not grad school is for them?
Yeah, I think medicine has changed quite a bit, honestly, in the last few years. I think in the past it used to be very linear. So you're pre-med, you go to med school, you do residency. And for me personally, I took 2 years off. It was the best decision that I ever made. Being on the Duke Medicine Admissions Committee, it's actually, most applicants are taking a year or two off to explore other interests or career paths before deciding that medicine is for them. And so I would say that take the time to explore, really think if medicine is the path for you. It's an incredibly rewarding field, but there are so many ways to get there, and all of your life experiences will make you a better doctor and someone that can connect with your patients better.
I think researching grad schools is really important to understand your fit, but I think before researching grad schools, something that's equally, if not more important, is reflecting on yourself. Whether or not you actually want to go to grad school, whether doctor, lawyer, engineer is actually something that you want, as opposed to something that the community champions. So I think there is definitely value, if not more value, in taking the time to understand what you want and to explore your interests and to understand where your strengths are, where your fit is. I think taking that time, energy, effort, and to invest in yourself by reflecting on yourself, realizing what you're good at, realizing what brings you joy, I think that is going to be more important. And I think that that also allows you to write an application that screams genuine and rings true.
Yeah, no, completely agree with both of those. I think, my piece of advice here is don't assume you have to go to grad school. I think, when I was considering going to an MBA and talking to a lot of my peers, I think, people kind of expect 5 years out of undergrad, you go to an MBA or you get another master's degree. That might be perfect for some people, but it's not one size fits all, right? And so you really have to consider, to Joy's point, reflecting on your own career, where you wanted to go, what your dream job is, whether it requires an MBA or another graduate degree, and if it doesn't, there are other ways to get there. And then the second thing is, I think in your program, whatever program you decide to apply to, think about where you want to focus and dedicate your time ahead of the program. I think once you're actually in the program, there's so many distractions, things going on. I mean, specific to the MBA, everything is true, we do travel a lot, right? So there's a lot of travel, there's a lot of networking, there is still class, and a lot of different club activities going on. You get distracted very, very easily. And so I think if you don't maintain that focus and, aren't very intentional about how you're using your time, the 2 years are going to fly by, or 4 years, whatever graduate program you're in, and you're going to realize that you're not in the place where you thought you would be, and you're, $200,000 in debt, right? It's a very expensive investment to invest in a grad school, and I think it is very worth it, but you have to make it worth it for yourself and invest your time where you really want to.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the finance part. I have to shamelessly plug, because I was lucky enough to attend a fully funded graduate program, so if you're interested in Schwarzman Scholars, I'm happy to talk about that more later, if you want to talk one-on-one. But this is why you should start thinking early, and I'm really glad that we have this forum today, because again, it's a chance to learn from peers. I really support peer mentorship, and you hearing this now, parents here to tell your kids, look into graduate scholarships. There's a list here: Rhodes, Gates, Cambridge, Marshall, Samvid, Soros, Knight Hennessy, Schwarzman. So these are all, possibilities if you don't have the financial security to pay for grad school. So I have to plug that, and then we are happy to open up the room for questions.
I actually have a question. Because three of you, I think, assume you are going to a professional industry like the law, business, and the medical. Since this event is a Tsinghua alumni event, there's a lot. I assume most of you grow up here in the U.S. In your each of the professional industry, I think there's a lot of successful models, role model for the first generation as well. I just want to know what you think about to leverage the resource for the first generation, like your parents, and the challenge. I really want to hear the challenge. What do you think about the two generations resource leverage? Sorry about that.
I can say something, you guys can think on it. Can you clarify, so my understanding, you're asking how can we benefit from the Gen 1's network and resources?
Correct.
Okay.
And if you have any challenge to use the resource from
Sure. I think first of all, when I'm researching like any of these programs, if I'm considering grad school, the Gen 1s are typically not completing the graduate programs at those specific schools that I want to apply to. So that's the first limitation. The second limitation is just simply what Richie mentioned earlier in his panel. I think there's a cultural gap where our community isn't really focused on this as a priority, to mentor all of our shared children as a community. So I think those are two limitations that I personally have experienced.
杨阿姨，我问一下，您是位妈妈吗？
是。
Okay, is your question how can I best help my child who wants to do this as a Gen 1?
那是not help to help，
Okay.
而是作为一个孩子，
行，
你们在跟就是华一代的人，就是接触的时候，我们需要做些什么样子，能够让你更加的容易接受到我们的 resource。
懂了。
Yeah, I mean, I think most of you guys are on WeChat, and my mom has, I feel like, the most powerful WeChat network ever. And I think, like, in Asian in medicine, this is not rare. And so I remember her reaching out to friends, and a lot of them have sons or daughters that are older than me in medicine. And she would reach out and be like, hey, you should speak to this gaga, this jie, and like ask them, how did they get into med school? Like, what do they like about their specialty? How can you study for the MCAT? And so I think that's a very simple way to go about this. But I do agree, like I think there's so many wonderful people in medicine who have already paved the way. And so I think any one of us are more than happy to help. So even today, like I'm sure you can find my mom on WeChat and have her give you my information.
Maybe we should use your method to be able to provide more resource to your generation, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Okay.
Yeah, I would also say as Gen 2, your parents' networks are very strong, right? Like I know my dad, has helped connect my brother with people for internships and stuff. And so I would say for all the Gen 2s out there, be open to that connection. Don't shy away from it. You're gonna have to get comfortable networking and cold emailing and whatever at some point in your life, so it might as well be now.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, he's back.
So what exactly is Schwarzman Scholar? Can you speak more about that?
Very quick, it's around a 10-year-old program founded by Stephen Schwarzman. He used his own private money this is his legacy, and it's focused on building future generations of leaders. They want to bring international students to go to China, learn about China, and
in Tsinghua.
yes, in Tsinghua. They want to learn in Tsinghua because Tsinghua is the best. And therefore, they get the best education in China. And really the long-term goal is that there are diplomats, business leaders, etc., academics who understand China and go back to their home countries, and in 50 years, there's world peace. Anyone else? Question?
So, in your going through growing up, in your education, what you didn't like about your parents? Anything you guys want to give a recommendation to your parents?
Your parents are not here. They don't know.
I don't know if my parents are here. I can start. Nothing against my parents. So I think I would say that Gen 1 has a very, at least in my opinion, maybe somewhat prescriptive idea of what success looks like. You get straight A's in high school, you go to a good college, you work for a few years at a high-paying job, you maybe get a PhD or another graduate degree. And I think that stems from a place of love, right? They want you to be successful, they want you to be stable in your life. But I would say that, there are a lot of different ways to get there, and I think as parents, being more open to the path that will make your child the most happy when getting there, I think is really important. I think that, we're all successful, we all took different paths to get here, and it's all possible, right? Like, if your child wants to be an artist, that's great. And I think there's a lot of different ways to make that work and still make ends meet, and if ultimately you're gonna be much happier that way, why not, right?
Yeah, I think that also, in medicine, academics are obviously very important. I wish I was someone that was perfect, but I also think it is something that's unachievable. I wasn't someone that got straight A's, and so when I was struggling with like organic chemistry or physics, my Tsinghua dad was like appalled, But I think like someone like as I was on the Duke Med admissions committee, like being able to demonstrate an upward trend, and also showing that hey, I'm going to take harder classes my senior year, but I'm going to do very well in them. That's something that goes a long way as well. And so I don't want you to feel like, oh, medicine is not something that's possible if I am not an A+ student all the way through.
I think support and being there are really important. I think it's one thing to say like, oh, I have XYZ large goal that you as my child have to meet. I would agree with both Mingyii and Gloria in that I think it's important for your Gen 2 to figure out what they excel at and where they're fit as. But I think more important than that is support and also just being there. I remember back in high school, I was really interested in speech and debate. And that meant that a lot of Fridays and Saturdays I was out of the house. Friday night, I would get to the school at 2 a.m. from the bus after competing all day, and my dad would be there picking me up. And then that would already be 2 a.m. And then 6 a.m. the next day, my dad would wake me up and we would go back to school. I would get on the bus and go out to compete again. I guess this is to the parents, 所以说中文也没有问题. But I feel like 说是一回事，真的能做到，真的能去陪伴，真的能去不仅仅是从金钱方面，但是从时间方面，真的去 be there for your kid, and 真的去 listen to their ideas and give value to their ideas. I think 是很重要的 and I hope you'll forgive my Chinglish, 但是我也很努力啊 So
Yeah, the time we have. We will try to stick around after the next panel, but there's a panel right after now, and so this is a girls-only panel. So thank you guys. Girls only. There's another girls-only panel. Annie, get over here. Thank you guys.